Welcome to the Standing in the Gaps News Deep Dive, the show that takes a deep dive into the news that matters. You hear Putin's name in the news all the time, but do you really know the guy? Today's deep dive is all about understanding this global power player, from his childhood in Leningrad to the complexities of the war in Ukraine. Standing in the Gaps News is a politically neutral organization. Our goal is to bring you the information and let you decide what to think.
We're going beyond the headlines, exploring how Putin's past experiences and his political maneuvering have shaped both Russian domestic policy and his actions on the international stage.
And we've got some fascinating source material to work with today. Biographical details, recent developments, even insights into Putin's relationships with other world leaders. Get ready for some serious insights. If you're already finding this interesting, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so don't forget to leave a comment below. Now, to really grasp the complexities of Putin's leadership, we need to go back to his beginnings.
Absolutely.
It's easy to think of figures like Putin as almost mythical, but he wasn't born into power. So let's start with the basics. Who is Vladimir Putin? Paint us a picture of his early life.
He was born in Leningrad, which is now Saint Petersburg, back in 1952. Imagine communal living, the lingering challenges of post-war Russia. Not exactly a privileged upbringing.
That's a far cry from the halls of power in the Kremlin. How did he go from that to leading Russia?
He studied law, which already shows a certain kind of ambition, a desire to understand systems. But then he joins the KGB in 1975. Think Soviet-era intelligence agency. And this period really shapes him. It wasn't just about learning espionage, it was about understanding power, control, and the flow of information, sometimes disinformation.
I can see how that kind of training would influence someone's worldview, especially in a place like the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It makes you wonder, did those years instill a sense of paranoia or a need for control that we see in Putin's leadership today? What do you think?
It's certainly a possibility, and I think it's essential to consider this early period when analyzing his later actions on the world stage. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, he returns to Leningrad and begins working for the mayor as an advisor on international affairs. He rises quickly, which suggests ambition and political savvy. But even then, there were whispers of corruption, a foreshadowing of things to come.
It sounds like a theme that continues throughout his career. How does he go from local politics in Leningrad to the president of Russia? That's a huge leap.
It was a rapid ascent, fueled by a mix of political maneuvering and historical circumstance. He moves to Moscow, works his way up in Boris Yeltsin's administration, eventually becoming prime minister in 1999, and then, when Yeltsin unexpectedly resigns, Putin becomes acting president. Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
Putin becomes president. It's the year 2000, and Russia is at a crossroads after the tumultuous Yeltsin years. What were his big moves early on? What kind of leader did he set out to be?
He came in with this image of strength and decisiveness. Russia was still reeling from the economic and political chaos of the 90s. Many people were longing for stability, a return to a sense of national pride.
And Putin played into that brilliantly. His first term focused on consolidating power, reasserting control over key industries. Some saw it as a necessary response to the oligarchs who had gained immense wealth and influence during the Yeltsin era. Others saw it as the first step towards authoritarianism. What's fascinating here is how he manages to walk this line between appearing strong and decisive while silencing dissent and consolidating his own power.
That's a really important point, and it speaks to the complexity of Putin as a leader. He's often portrayed in Western media as a villain, a dictator.
Right.
But within Russia, he enjoys a significant degree of popular support. How do you explain that disconnect?
It goes back to that yearning for stability and national pride you mentioned earlier. Putin presented himself as the man who could restore Russia to its former glory, both domestically and on the world stage. And he delivered, at least initially. The economy stabilized, living standards rose for many Russians, and he projected this image of Russia as a resurgent power, no longer beholden to the West. He cultivated a very specific persona. The tough guy, the former KGB agent. We've seen those photos of him shirtless on horseback, practicing judo. It's all very calculated, isn't it?
Absolutely. He understands the power of image and he uses it masterfully. But we also have to remember that this image resonates with many Russians. It taps into a deep-seated cultural archetype of the strong, decisive leader. It's a powerful narrative, especially when you consider the historical context. Russia has a long history of authoritarian leaders, from the czars to Stalin. So for many Russians, Putin's style of leadership isn't necessarily viewed as negative or unusual.
It helps us understand why Putin remains so popular, despite his increasingly authoritarian tactics. We have to talk about his second term.
Yeah.
And the allegations of election fraud, the suppression of dissent, the erosion of democratic institutions. Was this a turning point? Did the mask start to slip?
I think it was a gradual process, but yes. His second term marked a shift towards more overt authoritarianism. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 was a major turning point. It was a bold move, a blatant violation of international law, and it sent a clear message to the West. Russia is back, and we're not afraid to assert ourselves.
It was a gamble, though, wasn't it? The international condemnation, the sanctions, came at a price.
For Putin, the strategic and economic significance of Crimea outweighed those costs. He secured Russia's access to the Black Sea, a vital waterway for trade and military operations, and he gained a major propaganda victory, bolstering his image as the defender of Russian interests, the strong leader who wouldn't back down from a challenge.
And this brings us to the current war in Ukraine, the biggest gamble of Putin's career. We're seeing Ukrainian forces targeting Russian military assets, even drone strikes within Russia itself. It's a level of escalation we haven't seen before.
It's a dangerous game, and the stakes are incredibly high. For Putin, this war is about more than just Ukraine. It's about pushing back against what he sees as NATO expansion and a Western encroachment on Russia's sphere of influence. He's trying to redraw the map of Europe to reassert Russia's dominance in the region.
But it seems like he's facing growing challenges, both at home and abroad. The sanctions are crippling the Russian economy, and there are signs of discontent even within his inner circle.
Absolutely. The war has exposed weaknesses in the Russian military and economy that few anticipated. And Putin's recent moves pushing through constitutional changes that could allow him to stay in power until 2036, suggesting a meeting with former U.S. President Donald Trump, suggest a growing sense of desperation. He's grasping at straws, trying to maintain control in a situation that's rapidly spiraling out of his grasp. It's a fascinating development, and it's difficult to know for sure what Putin's motives are. He seems to believe that Trump, who has been critical of NATO and expressed admiration for Putin in the past, could be an ally in his efforts to undermine the West and negotiate a settlement in Ukraine on his terms.
So is this a genuine attempt at diplomacy or just another strategic ploy?
What do you think, listeners? Drop a comment below and tell us what you think about Putin's potential outreach to Trump. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
We're here to present you with the information and let you decide what to think. What's important is that we stay informed and engage in these discussions.
Have you ever dreamed of starting your very own podcast, but you don't know anything about computers? Sharing your story, your passion, and your voice with the world? Well, look no further. At Standing in Your Podcast, we're here to make that dream a reality. From helping you set up professional-grade equipment to guiding you through recording, editing, and distributing your podcast, or if you don't want to do anything but talk, we've got you covered every step of the way. It doesn't matter if you're a complete beginner or ready to take your show to the next level. Our team is here to bridge the gap between your ideas and your audience. Plus, we'll get your podcast out to all the major platforms so your message can reach listeners everywhere. At Standing in Your Podcast, your voice matters, and we're here to amplify it. Visit standinginyourpodcast.com today to learn more and schedule your free consultation. The world is waiting to hear what you have to say. Let's make it happen together.
Now let's shift gears and talk about the situation inside Russia. We've talked about the protests in Kursk Oblast over the government's handling of the situation there. Those protests, along with, rumblings of discontent from within Putin's inner circle, suggests that things might not be as stable as they seem.
That's right. And those protests, while localized, highlight a growing sense of unease within Russia. The war in Ukraine is taking a toll.
Not just on the economy, but also on morale. The constant stream of casualties, the impact of sanctions, the tightening grip of state control. It's creating an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty.
Putin's approval ratings are still relatively high. But for how long? Can he maintain that level of support if the war drags on?
That's the million-dollar question. Putin has built his power on this image of strength and stability. He's the guy who brought Russia back from the brink, the man who restored national pride. But that image is starting to crack.
He needs to project an image of strength to maintain control. But the very actions he's taking to project that strength, the war, the crackdown on dissent, are also undermining his support and further isolating Russia on the world stage.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the wild card in all of this, his potential outreach to Trump. If that meeting were to actually happen, it could have a seismic impact on the geopolitical landscape.
Imagine that. Putin and Trump. Two larger-than-life figures meeting to discuss the fate of Ukraine and the future of the world order.
It's a testament to how quickly the world can change and how unpredictable figures like Putin can be. He's a master of keeping everyone guessing, of playing his cards close to his chest.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from Putin's childhood in Leningrad to the complexities of the war in Ukraine, his increasingly authoritarian tactics, his potential outreach to Trump, and the growing challenges he's facing both domestically and internationally. What are some key takeaways for our listeners? What should we be watching for in the coming months and years?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Vladimir Putin is a complex and formidable figure who operates on a global stage. His decisions have far-reaching consequences, and it's crucial that we understand his motivations and strategies if we want to navigate the challenges of the 21st century.
He's a product of his past, shaped by his experiences in the KGB and the tumultuous years following the collapse of the Soviet Union. But he's also shaping the future, making bold and often risky moves that are reshaping the geopolitical landscape.
The situation in Ukraine is a critical inflection point. It will determine not only the fate of Ukraine itself, but also Putin's legacy and Russia's place in the world. Will he be able to achieve his goals, or will this war ultimately lead to his downfall? Only time will tell.
And we'll be here to analyze every twist and turn along the way. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future deep dives into the news that matters.
And if you're enjoying the show, we'd love for you to leave a comment below and tell us what you think. Your feedback helps us create even better content for you.
Our mission to bring you in-depth, unbiased analysis of the news that matters.
We're committed to providing you with diverse perspectives, insightful commentary, and thought-provoking discussions that go beyond the headlines. We need your support. We're currently running a GoFundMe campaign to help us reach a wider audience and produce higher quality content. We're raising funds for better equipment, webcams, studio microphones, editing computers, everything we need to elevate the quality of our show and bring you the best possible listening experience.
Every contribution, no matter how small, makes a difference. If you believe in the work we're doing and want to support our mission, please consider donating to our GoFundMe campaign. You can find a link in the episode description. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Vladimir Putin. It's a complex and ever-evolving story, and we appreciate you being here with us to explore it.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.